Hello, everyone. Welcome to the course entitled Before You Plant Anything. This course has been given course number 2188 by the North Carolina Landscape Contractors Licensing Board. This course has not been approved for pesticide credit, nor has it been approved for irrigation credit. This course is strictly for one technical or one landscape credit for your licensing CEU requirements for the North Carolina Landscape Contractors Licensing Board. So thank you for joining us. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. This is being on a landscape job. This is what it is that we do as landscape contractors. And we all tend to be in a rush. It's the busy time of year. It is. And I'm starting to think that when is it not the busiest time of the year? Because here in North Carolina, we can really landscape and perform our services for our clients 365 days a year. So to me, it always feels like we are in a rush. And as you can see, we have a young landscape employee getting ready to plant some shrubs there for the client. And we just want to make sure that we do the necessary things that we should do prior to planting our plant material. I think the biggest and most important thing that we should do is read the specifications from the designer. Whether it's the landscape architect, whether it's the engineer that's on the project, and I'm talking commercial projects here, we need to make sure that we read those specifications. If it is a residential job and if it has been drawn by a landscape architect, there's probably going to be some planting specifications. And we as landscape contractors, we're always go, 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 go. We're always in a rush. We never take the time to read those. And there are going to be times when that really hurts us and costs us some money. I've heard instances where, people have planted B&B trees, and the designer has requested that the wire baskets be removed. This wasn't on the landscape plan. This was in the specifications. And when you plant a large planting job and then you realize, or the landscape architect designer realizes that the wire baskets haven't been removed, and you have to dig them up and replant them with the baskets off, it's going to cost you money. So we've got to take the time to read our specifications and know what it is that the designer is wanting us to do. There's also going to be, in the specifications, information about the topsoil and how we should amend the soil. Again, a lot of this information is not found on the landscape drawing itself, but is found within the specifications. And depending, whether or not you're working for a commercial builder or you're working for a private residential customer, it may be hard to access some of these specifications. Now, typically the landscape architect should give you those specifications, but what it is, if it's on a commercial site, they've given that information to the general contractor, and it's the general contractor that we are working for that needs to give us this information. They're always wanting that cheap bid, so a lot of the times the specifications are withheld. And it's true, guys, when you hear this, we are licensed professionals. And so it is up to us, being the licensed professional, to find the information needed to complete the job. So if it goes to court and it's in the specifications and we tell the judge, hey, we didn't have a copy of the specifications, he or she's going to be like, I'm sorry, you're a licensed professional. You should be more competent in getting the information that you need to do the job. So always make sure you get a copy of it. And guys, if you get the copy of it, read it. And a lot of the times the jobs that we are doing, we may be in different portions of the drawings. We're probably going to be underneath civil first and foremost for the landscape work. But what about pre-construction or whatever? And they are listing the landscape contractor responsible for silt fencing. We didn't even pay attention to that. We didn't read the specifications. We didn't see that was part of our contract. And then we submit our bids and they call us, day one, hey, where you at? We're like, what do you mean where you at? you guys just started the project. We know we got the bid, but then the superintendent says, well, yeah, the landscape contractor is responsible for silt fencing, and we didn't include that in our bid. We're going to have to eat it. Read. You have to take the time. It goes back to that making and managing with your time. Not about time management. I'm talking about using your time for either making money or actually managing the money. And this is a situation where taking a portion of your day to read these specifications is going to pay off in the long run. And so let's go ahead and get started with the meat and potatoes of this lecture. We will have some check on learning questions throughout the lecture. It may or may not pertain to anything on the slides. This is just a way for us to check and make sure that you are still watching the lecture. So I may ask you a question out of the blue that has nothing to do with before you plant anything. And usually we have 2 to 3 questions like that will be on the 10-question quiz that you're going to access from the website. So, step 1's watch the lecture, take notes, and then go back and take the quiz, and then you'll be able to download your proof of attendance for the NCLCLB. So I appreciate you guys being here. And like I said, let's get started with before you plant anything. And before we plant anything, literally, we need to take a soil test. It's a lot easier to do this soil test with, residential homes because we're in the neighborhoods already. We can take our samples. We can, get them sent off either to the Department of Ag or to Site 1, which, will provide a soil test service for us. I like using Site 1 for it because we can get it back fairly quick. You can get the results emailed to you, which you can then forward on to your client, or you can download them and read them. Again, it goes back to reading the soil test and being able to understand it, but you can then put together a proposal for your client. You're going to get the samples back or the soil test back, and you're going to understand what it is that you need to do to make that soil a lot better for the plant materials that you're getting ready to use. So before you begin any landscape job, getting this up-to-date soil test should be the first step you take. You've got to take the time. You've got to go and pull the samples, and you've got to send it off, either to Department of Ag or Site 1. You will take samples from all areas of the landscape. We're re-landscaping the whole backyard. We need to get samples from all over the backyard. We're doing that commercial site. We need to get, each bed. We need to get the front foundation of the building. We need to cover our bases with every area of the soil. The soil test should be updated each year prior to fertilizing. So if you have the maintenance contract on these jobs, you're still going to want to do those soil tests because Mr. and Ms. Smith may want you to, build the project in, sections or portions, not all at once, or there may be, color change that they want to do with their annual beds. You're just going to maintain this property. You need to know what the soil is doing. These soil tests will provide information on macro and micronutrients and what the soil has. It'll also discuss the cation exchange capacity, or CEC, the organic matter content within the soil, and the soil pH. All of these are very important to being a landscape contractor, but we definitely need to know that soil pH. And we can correct that, really, really easy with the soil test. Recommendations will also be provided for liming and fertilizing, the turf grass and your shrub beds. So take the time. Guys, this is part of our lawn care program. It's just something that we do for our clients, and we charge them for it. It is an application visit. If you've joined us on Tuesday nights for Turf Talk Tuesday, we talk about that. How much does fertilize cost? We build that program, and our soil test, are going to the client's properties and pulling those plugs and sending them off to Site 1. We charge them for that. We make money off of our soil testing. A lot of people, I think, are scared to do that because, they're thinking it's a service they should just provide at no charge to the customer. Absolutely not. This is something that you should make good money, and it gives you work to do in late December, early January, right before the lawn care season kicks off. It gives you plenty of time to get those results in and design that customer's lawn care program. When reading the soil test results, there's going to be two different types of tests that you're going to get back. One is predictive. This is a common soil test that will analyze the soil content and provides recommendations on what is needed. Then there's a diagnostic soil test. This is taken when there is a problem with plant growth. You've got plants that are dying. You've got plants that look horrible. You've had to replace a few, and you're just like, what is going on? Then you will want to do the diagnostic soil test. This test will identify nutrient deficiencies and toxicities that could be affecting plant growth. You would never know what is happening if you don't do this type of test. There could be situations in the soil that are toxic that is not your responsibility, and yet you have a warranty on the plant materials that you are planting. Why do you want to keep replacing plants that are dying and looking bad when this is not your fault? We had a situation where we'd done a poolscape and we had screened out the entire pool. It was for a Krispy Kreme executive here in Winston. They'd built a new pool, new house, and they wanted to make sure that nobody could, see into their backyard. Even though the lots were fairly big, they still wanted that privacy. So we went in with big Nellie Stevens, big Foster hollies. I mean, we went in with B&B trees that were, 6 to 8 feet already. And we created a dense mass of screening around this pool. And we got a call from the client one day, and they're like, Eric, all of our trees are dying. And particularly the wax myrtles, because we did the evergreen screening all around the pool, but then we went back with some tree-formed wax myrtles on standard. We limbed them up and stuff, and then we had some more decorative shrubs around it and created more of an atmosphere of outdoor sitting around the pool. But every single one of the wax myrtles died, and a few of the hollies did die. And I'm like, well, yes, it's under warranty, but I said, something's not right here. And then I'd noticed that they had their pool deck pressure washed. And it took me doing the site visit to see what was going on. And I asked them, I said, you've had your pool deck pressure washed. And I'm like, do you know if they'd used any type of acid or whatever? And they called their pressure washing guy, and he's like, yeah, I did use an acid wash. Well, the acid ended up was the issue, killing the wax myrtles and a few of the hollies. Well, the pressure washer guy didn't like that. He didn't believe that. He's like, my stuff didn't do that. They just didn't plant the trees right or whatever. But we went and did a soil test, a diagnostic soil test, and it proved my theory to be correct. It was the acid that had killed the wax myrtles. And so guess who got to pay us to replant all of those trees? It was the pressure washing guy. So there was a case where, a simple, small charge to send it off to Site 1, made us, prevented us from spending a lot of money. And, we got the extra work. So, but with soil components, again, we need to understand what's going on in the soil. Just like with our plant material, a lot of us can't correctly identify plants. That is a big, big deal in this green industry. We need to know the names of our plants. We also need to know what's going on beneath the turf grass in our soil. I always call the soil a living organism. It is alive. It's full of, insects. It's full of worms. It's full of all kinds of, activity that's going on there that makes that soil alive. And we don't take care of it. So many times we're in a rush that we just throw a plant in the ground. We don't do any type of testing. We don't do any type of adding organic matter. We just throw it in the ground. Guys, we need to understand our soil just like we need to know our plant materials. But your soil organic matter, your SOM or SOM, this is plant, animal, and other organic material that is actively decaying within the soil. Again, it's there. It's plants, it's animals, it's the worms, it's everything. But all of this stuff is decaying within the soil. Your soil humus is a combination of organic compounds, and it is a part of the soil organic matter. 60 to 80% of it is your soil humus. Humic matter has the greatest influence in the cation exchange rate. Now, guys, there's PhDs in soil science, and we're taking a 1-hour class on it. So it's hard to jump in to the soil lectures and the whole soil science realm within 1 hour. This is, a basic class on it. But what I'm saying is that we need to get more information on it. I don't think there's enough taught in, D school, design school. At landscape architecture school, undergraduate, we took one class in soil science. In the program that we teach at the community college, there's one class on soil science. I think we need to have, a few more of them. We need to really understand our soils and how to correctly amend them so that our clients are enjoying their landscapes a whole lot better and not having to, replace plants because of the soil. With your cation exchange capacity, this is the total negative surface charge. When the higher exchange rates are most desirable, higher CEC levels reduce the amount of nutrients leached from the soil, and your low range of 2 I forget what that is, but that is milliequivalents, I believe. Milliequivalents per 100 centimeters. This is your low range, when it is less than 2.0 milliequivalents per 100 centimeters in sandy soils and over 25 in clay and organic matters. So again, another, series of lecture on cation exchange or cation exchange capacity. Now, here we have our soil triangle, and we're going to look at some problems with that. But this is a soil texture triangle showing the suitable differences between the soil classes, which we have clay, sand, and silt. And we're going to talk more about those in depth here in just a minute. But with your soil textures, soil texture determines its nutrient retention, drainage ability, and workability. Soil samples do not evaluate soil textures. It's not going to do that. We need to go out and perform like a ribbon test ourselves and figure this out on our own. But texture is determined by measuring the percent of sand, silt, and clay, and the texture can be determined by lab testing, not the soil test, or by doing the ribbon test. There's also like the jar test that we do at the college and show the students how to figure this stuff out, and it's neat. It is really neat doing this. But here we have the soil triangle. And I actually took a class on this myself for my continuing education a couple weeks ago. So I actually enjoyed that. It was a breath of fresh air doing this stuff again, and I was happy to actually learn that. But reading this, you've got your percent clay. And I'll turn the pen on here in a minute when we do it. So a percentage of clay, percentage of silt, and percentage of sand. And it's going to tell us where it is a sand soil, a loamy sand, sandy loam, sandy clay loam, sandy clay, clay loam, loam, sandy silt loam, silt loam, silt, silty clay loam, silty clay, or clay. All based on percentages. And so let's go ahead and grab out a piece of paper. I want you guys to jot this information down, the actual problems. We're going to do, a couple problems because there might be one on the quiz at the very end. But let's look at some problems. So the first problem, we have 75% sand. So write this down on a piece of scratch paper. We have 75% sand. We have 10% of silt. And then we have 15% of clay. Tell me what type of soil this is. So again, 75% sand. So we're basically kind of somewhere right in here. Let me grab the little pen so you guys can see. So got the pen. So we're what, about 75% sand. So right in here. 10% silt. And we've got 15% clay. And so basically, guys, we're basically just connecting. And where they intersect, I should have drew it a little bit more right there. But we have our sand. I messed that up. We should have gone this way, and then connected right there. We are in the sandy loam. So with 75% sand, 10% silt, and 15% clay, we are in sandy loam. And let's go ahead and let's see if we can erase all this. I love technology. All right, so let's look at another one. We have 42% sand, 21% silt, and 37% clay. So 42% sand. Put the pen back. So roughly right there. We have 21% silt. And we have 37% clay. And so if I can draw straight lines, this will be a little bit better. And we have our clay loam. So, fun stuff here. And we're going to do one more before we jump on over. All right, so we have one more. We're going to do one more problem. We have 27% sand, 52% silt, and 27% sand, 52% silt, and 21% clay. So 27% sand, 52% silt, and we have 21% clay. Dun, 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 dun. And we're in the silt loam. Now, I apologize for my non-architectural draftsmanship here, but we're using a digital mouse to actually make this happen. So you get the idea when it comes to figuring out your soil textures here. And so, like I said, this can be done ribbon test or, jar test easily would separate it in the percentages like that. And you'd be able to tell what type of soil that you do have. And here is a soil ribbon test. This is actually, going out, going out into the field and actually doing this yourself. And, farmers or people that grew up in agricultural, they can do this a lot better. They, you always see grandpa reaching down and, grabbing a little bit and rolling that around, and he's got that soil in his palm. I didn't know what he was doing when I was a young man, but now look at it. So here we're going to flow diagram for estimating the soil texture by fill. Take approximately 1 tablespoon of soil and wet by adding water in small amounts. Need to break down all aggregates until the soil is plastic and moldable, almost like a putty, Play-Doh. Step 2, try to form a ribbon of uniform thickness and width by gently pushing the soil between the thumb and forefinger, and then allow the ribbon to emerge and extend over the finger, breaking from its own weight. A, if the soil does not ribbon, it is a coarse texture. B, the soil does ribbon. What is the length of the ribbon? If the ribbon is over 2 inches, it is a fine texture. If the ribbon is 1 to 2 inches long, it is moderately fine texture. And if the ribbon is less than 1 inch long, go to step 2. Step 2, excessively wet a small pinch of soil in your palm and rub with your forefinger. And is the soil gritty? If the soil is not gritty, it is a medium texture. And if it is gritty, it is a moderately coarse texture. And so go outside and practice with this. That's the only way you're actually going to learn about the soil texture. Do it by doing it. Learn it by doing it. And so with sand is your large gritty particles, best for drainage, has low organic content, and it leaches nutrients pretty quickly. And I'll be the first to admit, guys, when we were in school and our professors told us that sand was the largest particles, I'm like, man, you're crazy. And but hear me out on this, and I totally understand it now. But being a, I don't know, a know-it-all when I first went to school, because I grew up in the business and, was still working for my parents when I went through landscape architecture school. And when our professor said that sand is the largest particle of soil out there, I was like, man, you're crazy, because all I could think about was red dirt balls, from what I was used to working in. I'm like, how is sand bigger than these red clumps of clay? But I was totally wrong, right? But, we're going to see it here in a picture that definitely describes why sand is the largest particles. It is good for drainage. Soil that has a lot of sand in it, it's not going to stay wet. It is bad for plants, though, because they're going to dry out. They're going to need more irrigation because the water's just going to pass on through. And it doesn't have much nutrients, so you've got to take care of that. And when you add the nutrients, they do wash out very, very quickly. With silt, it's light and fluffy, almost resembles a flower, just difference in color. It holds more water and nutrients than sand, and it can be compacted. So a pretty good soil to have. But nonetheless, guys, good old clay is my favorite. And people make fun of me that, like, Eric, why you like that red clay from where you're from? It's just because that's where I'm from. If I was down on the coast, sandy soils would be my favorite. It's just where we were born. And I know it's kind of wrong to look at it that way, but that's the way I do. But clay, it is the smallest particle size. It is easily compacted, sometimes too easy to compact. It holds large amounts of water and nutrients that's not always going to be available for our plant material, which is a bad thing. We've got to help it become available. And we may need to add the organic matter to the heavier clay soils because not much is going to grow in it if we don't. And we need to make those nutrients available, and we need to make the water available to it. So you can have wet feet. If you plant azaleas just in plain red clay, look what that's going to do to those guys. They're going to kill it because they don't like the wet feet. We need to plant them a little bit high, and we definitely need to add that organic matter. But still, nonetheless, my favorite soil. A little dirt on my boots. But here, look at this diagram. This talks about, the soil texture. We got the sand, silt, and clay, and we've got the particle size here in millimeters. So sand is 0.05 to 2, silt 0.002 to 0.05, which is, silt is starting. The largest particle of silt is right there at the smallest particle of sand. And then anything, less than 0.002 is your clay soils. And then we've got, percolation and leaching, definitely going to come through very quickly in sand. A little bit slower in the silt, but still more is going to leach through than what does in the clay. But how soils form together involves the soil solids and the pore space between these solids. And as you can see with the sand, there's more air and just room in between the soil particles, and that allows the water and the nutrients just to wash on through. Structure is a major factor in air and water movement, the root growth, the seedling germination, and the biological activity. Parent material does determine a soil's structure. Cultivation of soil can break down parent material and can cause compaction. Soil compaction can lead to poor root growth, reduced drainage, small pore space, and reduced water infiltration rate. So compaction is not good. Not good. And it's bad for the turf grass, and that's why, we aerate. I had a guy tell me the other day, he said, people think we aerate so we can seed our yards. But he said that's not the case. We aerate to alleviate the compaction in the soil. So sometimes, if you've got a great stand of grass, you may not have to overseed, but still going in and plugging and breaking up that soil compaction is what it needs. With compost, this is stable material resulting from the decomposition of organic matter. This is good to have to put in our planting beds when we're doing it. Material must contain carbon in order to be organic. It does contain soil microorganisms, and it helps improve soil structure and even out the texture. Organic matter also resists compaction, retains the water, and improves root environment. That's why we add it to our shrub beds. And again, this is something that we may have to sell our clients on. Every estimate that I create, I put that as a line item, the organic matter that we're incorporating. And I've even had customers say, well, you should just do that. We're buying the plants from you. You should make it good. I'm like, we are going to make it good, but it's not my responsibility to amend your bad soil. This is what the soil test is telling us to do. You need to pay for it. And guys, this could actually get you out of some of the warranty issues. If the client doesn't want to add soil amendments to the shrub beds and do a good bed prep, then you may not have to warranty the material. Just let them know. For us to warranty the new plants for one growing season, you need to go ahead and add these soil amendments. With soil chemistry, and here we have a pH scale, which is a measure of a soil's acidity or alkalinity. The scale is from 0 to 14. 7 is considered to be neutral. Below 7 is acidic, and above is your alkaline soils. Nutrients are most available with the pH between 6.5 and 7.5, and most of your plants are going to do well in that range. There are some that doesn't, but most of them are good between 6.5 and 7.5. A pH above or below this range can cause nutrients to be toxic or unavailable to our plants. And that's the big concern. You know, you're spending money on fertilizer, and now with the cost of fertilization, I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, farmers are electing not to grow corn this year. They're growing soybeans because it takes less fertilizer. And when we're putting fertilizer out in our customers' yards, we want to make sure that the nutrients from the fertilizer is available for the plants. With slope, consider slopes when installing patios, turf, or plant material. You can't do it on the side of a hill, can you? But plants at the bottom of a slope may remain wet for longer periods of time. All the water rushes down, and it may not have a way to escape, at the bottom. You're going to have some type of drainage or channel to get that water out. Steep slopes may prevent the use of mowing the turf. So fast-growing plant material will need to be used to prevent erosion. And you can do something, some of your grasses that do grow pretty fast, or some of your faster growing junipers. I love planting, the Shore Pacific Junior on steep banks, because they're going to cover it in probably 2 years. You're going to have to keep mulching it, and you may have to go back and do a little bit of raking with your mulch and pine straw, but once those junipers take hold, you're good to go. With climate and microclimates, microclimates are small areas within a climate that experience higher or lower temperatures due to city structures, pavements, and wetter or drier due to location. So you've got these microclimates within the larger climates, and microclimates can exist on small residential sites. I mean, they can. The backyard could be a microclimate up against the house just because it doesn't get enough sunlight. And certain plants aren't going to grow there because they need so many hours of direct sunlight. Microclimates need to be identified, and they need to be dealt with properly when it comes to planting our shrubs and trees. All conditions must be considered before selecting the appropriate plant material. And that's true. We've got to understand what these microclimates are and where they're at. Exposure, large influence on the microclimates, whether or not it gets full sun, part shade, or whatever. This is a factor when considering plant material. Consider reflective surfaces near the planting beds. That helps with a lot of the plants that do need the direct sunlight. With existing plant material, preservation of existing plant material will affect construction activities. Avoid disturbing the root zone of established trees. Do a site inventory and analysis before beginning projects. You've heard me talk about that in previous classes. Site inventory and analysis is very, very important to any new project you're doing for the client. I don't care if it's just lawn care or just mowing. You need to do a site visit and take inventory of what's there and analyze it. You don't want to mow a yard that's got, continuous wet spots in the backyard. Something that could be corrected fairly easy. And when you drive over with that zero-turn mower and you're sinking in and creating a mud spot, clients aren't going to be happy. Identify these situations and let them know up front. Remove any non-essential plant material as well as any that is damaged or diseased prior to planting the new plants. And we're about halfway through, and we got a few minutes left for that. And so with underground utilities, you must locate all underground utilities before planting or proceeding with any type of digging. You got to call 811. You are required by law to contact NC 811 3 full business days before starting any type of evacuation or excavation. I'm sorry, why was I thinking evacuation? But excavation, you need to let them know 3 days in advance. Homeowners can also request this service for informational purposes, and 811 will not mark private lines. They're only going to do the public. And now let's do a check on learning. Turf teacher, myself, is looking at adding to our general contractor's license which license. I want to get the public utilities license. Now that we're talking about public utilities, I want to get that public utilities license so we can actually install our own water meters and our own backflows for irrigation systems. The city of Winston will allow the public utilities contractor to put in the cradle for the meter and actually do the backflow. With underground utilities, there's a tolerance zone. This includes the width of the utility and 24 inches on either side. Dig by hand within this tolerance zone to help prevent damage to the lines. If lines are damaged, you must file a damage report with 811. With site preparation, the landscape should be the last thing installed on any construction project. We are the last ones in, and typically the builders have ran out of money, but it's just part of the game. But being the last on site helps prevent damage to the plants and the turf and confirm that the GC or other party has established the final grade and that the water properly drains. Now, I don't care what anybody says. They're all going to be mad at the landscaper if they have drainage issues. Water could be leaking into the basement, and it's our fault. When you have a slope turned back like this into the house, well, it's the landscaper's fault. Well, the grading contractor just left yesterday. Why didn't he take care of this? For some reason, it all falls back on us. So make sure, check with the GC and get them to say, hey, yeah, everything is good to go. Be sure to review the specification documents to ensure the landscape is prepared and installed correctly. Add your topsoil, till in the plant beds, make sure you're using the correct planting techniques, and then using the correct plant material and the amounts. Guys, if you're on a commercial site and it's drawn by a landscape architect, I'm seeing them show up to the job sites. They're getting out tape measures and they're measuring height and size. Some landscape architects want to go to the nursery when you buy the plants and check them off and say, yes, this plant is suitable. They're getting that detailed and they're getting that involved with the projects. If it's done by a civil engineer, you're probably not going to see it. Civil engineers can do site plans with the plant material on it. But landscape architects, they're taking a more direct involvement with the planting of their designs. So they're going to be checking to see if you're adding the topsoil or however they wrote the specifications. You're going to want to make sure you did that. They're going to make sure that the minimum standards are met. And the North Carolina Landscape Contractors Licensing Board lists our minimum standards. We need to abide by them on every job site. And with soil amendments, the optimum range for organic matter in the soil is about 5%. So most of your North Carolina soils contain 1 to 3% organic matter. Add your needed organic matter during site preparation, and then adding ½ inch of organic matter 6 to 10 inches into the soil can increase your soil organic matter, or your SOM, 4% by volume. With soil amendments, always use high-quality material that has been properly composted. If organic matter is not needed, it is still important to properly till the beds in preparation. Tilling is a good time to incorporate any needed fertilizer or lime. And again, we don't take the time to do this, but tilling in those beds makes planting so much easier. Nothing worse than seeing your guys have to get out an auger to plant a 3-gallon shrub. That shouldn't be the case, guys. We're not doing any justice for these plants, and we're not doing right by the client if we're not amending these soils and tilling them in. This is going to make it so much easier on you planting the plants, warrantying the plants, and taking care of them. Because a lot of these specifications are going to say landscape contractor responsible for months, usually a few weeks, but I've seen them months, and I've seen some say landscape contractor responsible for 1 year of maintenance. Well, you want to make sure that you have the good soils for the plants. It's going to make watering a lot easier. It's going to make fertilizing a lot easier. When transporting and hauling the plants, Your root stems and foliage must be protected. Cover them up. Cover them with a tarp for extra protection, or better yet, put them in an enclosed trailer or enclosed box body truck. Plants with new spring growth are easily damaged. Always handle the container plants by the container. I see a lot of our guys pick them up by the foliage, and I'm like, no, pick them up by the container. Show them how to do it. If plants are stored on the job site, be sure to protect from damaging weather conditions, and do not let plants dry out or freeze. And this is the time of year that we're having to watch that. I mean, I'm recording this on April 1st, 2022. We're having to cover strawberries tonight just because we're expecting a hard freeze in the morning. The April 15th is just around the corner, not for tax day, but that's, usually the day that we're not going to have any more freezes after. But you got to be careful on these job sites when you have the plants stored on site. Planting techniques for trees and shrubs. Properly installed plants will establish quicker and will require less maintenance. Again, goes back to tilling in the soil, right? If known, plant trees in the same orientation as they grew. This can reduce sun scald. Mark it at the nursery when you pick it up, not hard to do, guys. The planting hole should be twice the diameter of the root ball, and then install the plant at the same level that it was previously. Now, I know that some municipalities are requiring more than twice the size. It just depends on where you're at. You need to check with your city arborist. You need to check with the inspections division and see what it is that they require. When backfilling, if amending the soil, blend the amendments together before backfilling the soil into the hole. Keep the backfill free of large rocks and debris, and be sure not to cover the root flare when installing the tree or mulch. I can't stand it when you see mulch and soil forming like this triangle ring around the tree trunks. Don't do it. Make sure that I like creating that donut, and that way all of that soil is not up against the tree trunk. Lightly tamp the soil after backfilling is complete, and then water thoroughly. Planting bare root plants. We've only done this once or twice maybe in my career, but I don't like doing it. You'll have to keep the roots cool and moist before planting. Holes do not need to be dug as deeply as B&B or container plants, but will need to be wider. Plant first the main order root just below the soil surface, and then tamp the soil when backfilling to ensure adequate soil and root contact. Water well and then mulch it. Installing berms, tree wrap, staking, and mulching. Berms used to retain water for newly installed plants, kind of like the donut ring is what I'm calling about. And that's actually pretty good. The root flare is not covered up. But when we talk about the root flare, we have individuals that will kind of pile it up all around like that. They've thrown the mulch up around it, and they still may have this donut ring, but there's still a lot of soil up against it. That whole area needs to be cleared out. But use the backfill to create a 4 to 6 inch berm on the outer edge of the hole. With tree wrap, not recommended as a standard practice. It should be loose fitting and removed before the trunk outgrows the wrap, and not necessary for your ornamental shrubs. Let's go ahead and erase that before we move on. Let's see. When staking, provides protection, support, and anchorage to newly installed plants. Improperly staked trees may be girdled and may not build proper taper. And there are always going to be specifications on this, guys, whether it's on another separate 24 by 36 drawing or if it's in a PDF document that you can access. Always look and see about whether or not how the designer wants it staked. When watering, Plant watering is essential to newly installed plant success. Supplemental watering will be needed throughout the initial grow-in period. Drip irrigation is best for large planting beds and around individual trees. And then carry a soil probe to determine the watering needs. Now, it's a pretty good little system here. It might be overkill, but the one thing with it, you don't have to run it as long. Planting time, plant bare root plants during dormancy, January through March. B&B and container plants can be planted any time of the year. Avoid planting during droughts in the hottest months. And that always happens. We always have a big commercial job in July and August for some reason. And we got to make sure that, the trees are getting sufficient water. Ideal planting season is October through late May. When mulching, mulch is aesthetically pleasing, but also serves many functions such as moisture retention, weed control, stabilize soil temperature, and adds organic matter over time. Now, the one issue that I have with mulching is the buildup of pine straw and mulch. It's not decaying fast enough before we replenish it. So there might be times that you might want to remove some of the old pine straw before you put the new down. When it starts, flowing out of the bed and not defining those turf grass lines, it's probably time to remove some of it. And we've actually had clients that has hired us because their former landscaper had too much mulch in the beds. And just refused to take it out and still just kept adding to it. So mulching can be an issue with that. Pruning at planting, prune any dead or damaged branches at planting, remove any co-dominant leaders. I agree with that, but some specifications may state whether pruning is desired at planting time. I'm not a big fan of it, but these two issues right here, any dead, yes, needs to come out, or any branches that are rubbing and can cause, a place of entry for disease and insects. And then if you don't want but one dominant leader, cut out one that may be in competition with the main one. With perennials, annuals, and ornamental grasses, the most important preparation you can do prior to installation to loosen the soil, amend if needed, and test the soil to determine if fertility is needed. Annuals require a higher fertility schedule. Annual and ornamental beds may need more maintenance throughout the year to maintain appearance. And then grasses are often tolerant poor and dry soils. Treat the same treat the same as perennials. So and I think this wraps it up, guys. It does. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully this was some good information, especially going back to the soils. And there will be a 10-question quiz, and we know that we do have one check on learning in there, and I think I'm going to go ahead and do another one. And let's see, trying to think of something that's getting you through the end of it. But who does Eric want to win the NCAA tournament this year? We have Duke playing Carolina, and we have Villanova playing Kansas. I'm rooting for Duke, guys. So that'll actually be one of your check on learning questions. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you in the next lecture.